Hi guys, Hengist here from House Hengist Comics. A big welcome back. I hope you're having a nice day or night. Effectively, this is back in the Norway in Flames series, our penultimate game entitled Mirkwood. Right, let's look at the news. The news is that Operation Weserung is really nearly complete. We're in the third tier, which is the furthest arrow going up towards Narvik, as you can see in this map. Vidkun Quisling has basically accepted the Germans as liberators. He wants to install a pro-fascist sort of regime. He's very anti-communist based on his experiences with the Soviets. And he feels he's going to be supported. Alas not. Goebbels rants and raves is basically sowing deception as a massive amount of German armour is building up in the West to launch one of its greatest operations in history to date. Meanwhile, we've got naval action. Within the fjords, we've still got a huge number of losses, lives being lost. And the air crews above as well are constantly engaged. Long-range flights for the British and for the Germans as well. The falschrimjager, well, they landed, as we said last week. They're now basically ready to go to support actions around Narvik. The set. Well, let's look at that now in a little bit more detail. We have an 8-foot length table here with the mountain going all the way along that length in the centre of the table. We've got some plateaus obviously for the wargaming purposes and so that infantry can fight, but we've got steep slopes again, and we'll be using grappling hooks as well, so only mountaineers can really attempt that. And we've also got obviously all the stones and features like that, which again only mountaineer troops can go into. As you can see, I'm quite happy with the layout. I mean, there's still a lot we could do to this. It's just time and trying to basically do it all in one sort of session. The Norwegians, well, what have they got? Well, they've got one platoon basically of riflemen, a company command, some machine guns basically, anti-aircraft weapons and some artillery. That's all they've really got left. They're confident trained. Whilst supporting them are the Polish forces. They've only got really 2 platoons. Both of these companies have seen action and they are eroded. They've got some machine guns with them as well, and some specialist characters, but not much else. Both of these forces combined are about 900 points. It's not a lot when we look at the German forces they're facing. The German forces have conducted an excellent campaign so far. Their casualties have been minimal. The falschrimjager have already shown what they can do down at Solar Airfield. They're highly trained, fearless, extremely good, but not mountaineers, whereas the gebirgsjaeger are. Both forces have a similar makeup with 2 platoons, some scouts, some mortars, some support guns or anti-tank guns, and have good complements. What the Germans aren't aware of is the Allies have air. So let's have a look at the mission and the deployment here. We've got a central objective which the Germans have placed, and that's been placed in Mirkwood, whilst the Allies have placed 2 objectives behind the slope. If you look down here, you can see that some of these slopes are quite steep. Hopefully the Allies' plan is things will go wrong or they'll slow down or whatever. But they've deployed all the way along really the left-hand side, leaving with their guns and infantry and scouts and things like that. And they can't basically cover the entire mountainside, so to speak. So they've concentrated around Mirkwood, where they've got defence. They've also got an ambush because this is a hasty attack. So there'll be 3 objectives down and 1 will be pulled. Having deployed, they're pretty interlocked, and they're back in the wood, making it difficult for the Germans to really see them. It's a good deployment overall, a bit weak on the wings, but they just don't have the forces to cover every option. The Germans, on the other hand, have stretched all the way out to give them maximum tactical flexibility, and on the right-hand side, they've placed the falschrimjager. On their far left, they've got a firestorm unit, which is some ski troops. We're again using Achtung Panzer version 2 and 3 with our bolt-ons, and again we would have a battle deck, and I just wanted to quickly mention this. We haven't put one into play, but this is where you can put cards in which indicate weather, or as we were discussing during the game about sort of snow anchors, and you could give a card basically when it's rolled, and it allows you to leave ropes so that other non-mountaineers could use those ropes. These are sort of optional cards, they don't change the game. Right, without further ado, let's get into the battle action. As we immediately start by checking for the weather. And again, we get deep snow. Now, this doesn't really affect all the mountaineering troops, but it will affect the falschrimjager. As we look at the deployment quickly again, the Norwegians are basically waiting on that ridge as the Germans move forward with all their reconnaissance force. But immediately, the 2nd falschrimjager platoon bogs down. The whole platoon has to take one roll, and if it fails, it becomes stuck and disorganised in the snow. Effectively, the gebirgsjaeger move up. They make successful grappling hooks and immediately then open fire. Typically German smoke first, HE second, and they manage to take out one of the Bofors straight away. They are then surprised, however, with a hurricane which dives down. I think it pins one platoon and kills about 4 falschrimjager. When again, as the scouts, the falschrimjager scouts move up, they're counterattacked rather viciously by the pioneers. But in the end, the pioneers take more damage, and effectively the falschrimjager scout platoon isn't forced to disengage and holds the ground. As the gebirgsjaeger fan out a little bit and start looking to flank that position in Mirkwood, because they know and they sense that they've got to get forward, because they know an ambush is coming, and eggs are eggs, and that ambush does appear, putting another 4 heavy machine guns down in Mirkwood. That gives it 7 heavy machine guns in there. It is not a place that the soldiers really want to be going, but that looks like the only route, because we find that the falschrimjager are unable, because they're not mountaineers, to climb that mountain. It is sheer, and they have to move across, and they may grumble like good soldiers, but they get on with the job like good soldiers and immediately maneuver around and start, with all their exertion pumping up that hill. As it gets darker in Mirkwood and looking very, very, I suppose, menacing for the Axis forces, the falschrimjager know they've got to get up and support and make an attack on the centre, because effectively all around we're seeing smoke and artillery being used very well by both sides, but it's the artillery, and the Norwegian artillery is suddenly surprised by a German ski platoon, which is a firestorm unit, which makes a bold attack at their flank and is only just repelled because of support fire from the Poles. They are pushed back, but now hover like I suppose hawks waiting for a moment to attack. As in Mirkwood, it's very, very nervous for both sides. Someone's got to start, but the Germans again realise they've got to go in. I mean, they're only on about turn 4, but they know that the job has to be done. And as the falschrimjager climb up those steep cliffs, the gebirgsjaeger scouts move round, start lifting gun to ground, put in a sniper, he's firing, he's pinning, and they're trying to do it sequentially and by the numbers, but it's still a very tough ask, as again those little ski troops hover. They come under fire, but they're okay. As in the centre, what we see is the scout platoon, what's left of it, basically hastily assault one of the mortars and kills it, and then fall back out. The gebirgsjaeger are giving a lot of covering fire now. They're sniping very well, causing problems for the Poles. But the Poles themselves fight a very good action this day. These Polish mountaineers, they had their wits about them today, that's for sure. And as the falschrimjager move up this sort of steepish slope, they manage to get into a position where they're ready to launch, effectively a company assault against Mirkwood. Everyone is on the edge of their seats, because there's a lot of defensive fire in there. There are casualties on both sides from sniping and small arms. As the ski troops again launch out and this time catch the gunners. They've taken them this time in the flank. They effectively fire and ski, their skis hissing through that snow, and they start to descend down towards the other 2 guns, having destroyed and rolled them up. But the heavy machine guns in the centre here seen, supported by air attacks from behind, start to cause even more problems for the falschrimjager. They're not quite ready to make that jump off assault. The skiers hiss down the slope, but this time again it's down to the Poles and rifle teams from the guns that shoot off remarkably the ski troops and break that platoon. That will put their guns back into play, and so effectively what the falschrimjager and the gebirgsjaeger decide to do is they're going to go. and even though they've taken casualties, as can be seen here, going up that mountain, they now launch into their assault. Of course, being veterans, they know how to move through this type of terrain. The falschrimjager have to take bogging checks every move, which is rather precarious, but they managed to get in when effectively all hell erupts in that wood. Darkness becomes light as we see tracers and bullets ripping out into both sides. A number of men go down on both sides. The Norwegians and Poles come off better off because most of them are dug in, but that doesn't deter the falschrimjager. They were angry they couldn't get up that slope. They're now going to show what they can do. And although they take a lot of casualties and there's massive back and forth, a genuine hatred appears between them and the Poles. And when the Poles surrender on that bridge as they're being pushed down the slopes, basically they give no quarter and open fire and finish them off. We then see a last desperate attack as the Norwegian infantry have been slaughtered. The heavy machine guns have all been overrun, grenaded. One last Pole platoon, Lee. They've survived company morale and an enforced morale, but they can't quite get in, and it's a German victory. Again, an excellent victory, an excellent game. Very, very tense in that central part of the Mirkwood. Very deceptive in terms of casualties. The German forces lost about 100 men in that wood and around that baseline. I think the Norwegians and the Poles were effectively wiped out. They lost about 140 men. But, that day, the gebirgsjaeger sort of kept themselves together without losing really a platoon. The falschrimjager lost their guns and were very depleted. But they've had the opportunity to break out of here. And although we're using the lists from Norway, which we found very useful, obviously we've looked at other elements. So we're going to see them break out towards Sweden. We won't be playing that, but obviously they're looking back here. They can't get back towards Narvik. And it's really the end for the Norwegian forces up there. Now, what will the falschrimjager do? Well, they've got a lot of work to do in the lowlands, I can tell you that. Well guys, we've got Blitzkrieg coming up in about 3 weeks' time, where we start our lowland campaign. The big campaign itself will be the Muse operation. The rest of it we will be doing as small-scale scenarios or historical battles, and we are really excited about this. So in the meantime, stay tuned for more from Norway. Please continue to share, support and subscribe. And if you like our work, let us know, and please, by all accounts, contact us. So in the meantime, it's over and out from me. Bye for now.